everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Private Club Radio. I'm your host, Denny Corby, and we have a fantastic episode this week. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Private Club Radio. I'm your host, Denny Corby, and this week we have a fun episode. We get to sit down and chat with one of my really good friends, pretty much family at this point, Mr. Lee Stall, CCM, CCE, aka the Godfather, as he's known down south in his Pelican chapter of the CMAA. But we have a really cool episode this week. He is one of the reasons probably why I do as many clubs as I am involved in the club industry, in the club world. He was one of the first people in the to give me an opportunity to come travel and perform at his club, and that started a amazing relationship, friendship, familyship. I have no idea what to call it, but we have an amazing talk. We talk about his early years growing up, how his career got started in the club world, and something I took away was one of his first club managers said to him, "If you want to grow, you gotta go." So we talk about that a little bit. We talk about having some skin in the game, about what it takes sometimes, even if you might not have full support, but just doing what you have to, putting your own skin in the game to make it work. And really just, we have a really cool, fun conversation. I'm really excited about this. At one point, you hear about how he invited me to come perform at one of his clubs, and a table in the front just fell asleep. So you hear about how some people fell asleep during one of my shows. They were really old. So don't judge me based off that. But this is a really fun episode. Before we do get started in the episode, though, I do want to say a couple of things. Is we did have some tech issues. And by we, I mean me. Me and Lee were chatting right when this all first came about. This is when we recorded our episode, and I was a little bit new and still am new to this whole interviewing podcasting platform. And the platform I used, we had a little bit of technical difficulty. So I wanted this to be our first episode because to me, he was kind of one of the first to give me a start, and this is a new start. So I thought it'd be cool to have him be on the first episode, but had a little bit of technical issues where I had to go in manually and fix a lot of the audio. So you're going to hear a lot of clicks, a lot of background noise, some barking. A lot of that's me. I tried to take out as much as I can, so I apologize, but please bear with me through it. And the interview was longer. We had some really good nuggets, especially at the very end, but unfortunately they got cut off. But we are going to have another talk again. We are going to bring Lee back on. We're going to have some more fun conversations because he is an amazing person with tons of valuable knowledge that I just want to share and chat with him about. So, like I said, thank you so much for tuning in. I apologize for the lateness of this episode. I wanted it to be the first one, but it is what it is. Apologize about the tech, but ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Lee Stall, the Godfather. You know, I thought before I bring Lee on, I should maybe reintroduce myself and explain where I kind of came from a little bit, what got me to this interview with Lee, what got me to hear Private Club Radio, kind of what I also do, just so you can kind of get a feel for who I am as a person. So I am Denny Corby. I travel the country doing a magic and comedy show. It's the Denny Corby Experience. I do it in primarily two markets, the private clubs, so all of our city clubs, country clubs, yacht clubs, you name it. And the other is business events. So sales meetings, after dinner shows, holiday parties, all that fun stuff. So it's basically your people just in their business environment instead of at your club. So I grew up, still live right outside Scranton, Pennsylvania, a little town called Clark Summit now, but I grew up in Scranton. If you watch the TV show The Office, you know Scranton. There's the paper supply company, Dunder Mifflin. This is a true story. My family owns the paper supply company in Scranton, and the running joke is that my dad tells people that I quit the family business to turn tricks for a living. So, so that's the fun story. I actually probably can't make that joke anymore now. Dad sold the family business, sold it off a couple of months ago. So now I have to do the magic full time. No, I'm kidding. But they're really cool parents. Ever since I was younger, I've worked in all facets of the family business. Got up to sales in one of the companies, and parents knew I didn't love it, but always had a passion and love and yearning, I guess, so to speak, for performing, doing magic, making people laugh and smile, comedy. So was always doing shows throughout my career, and just growing up, and then finally was working for the family biz, doing some stuff, and my parents knew I didn't love it. And I was early 20s, and they said, hey, listen, we know you kind of don't love working here. Why don't you kind of, go and try the magic full time? You don't want to be 30, 40, 50, 60, however old, looking back on life going, what if? So I'm very fortunate that they gave me the push, the opportunity to go and try this entertainment career full time, because it's been working. So that's kind of what got me to here. And I started doing a lot of shows, realized I started clicking and doing a lot with the private club community. I was performing for a lot of private clubs for their members. I was doing shows at clubs for the members in particular for their events. So I just started diving into this private club world. And from there, I kind of did some research, and I found the CMAA, and I just started finding out all about the club world, and I stumbled upon Lee Stall, and I found Lee's club. It looked really cool. It looked really, really fun, and I called him, and he didn't answer right away. I left him a voicemail, but he called me back. And from there, what turned into a voicemail and a callback turned into a really great, pretty much, I would say we call each other family at this point. So what was client turned friend turned, I don't know what, but he is probably one of the main reasons I've got as involved in the club world. He introduced me to the CMAA and just the inner workings of really, how clubs work and everything, and always was there to give me guidance, answer questions about the club world and things. So this is a really cool episode for me. That's a little bit of background of kind of who I am, where I came from, what I'm still doing. I still travel doing club shows on the weekends. We do this podcast by day, shows by night for now. But yeah, so I'm super excited. This is going to be a really fun episode. If you listened through this, great. Make sure you connect with me on the socials. Obviously, we have the Private Club Radio, LinkedIn and Instagram. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Denny Corby, you can find me on there. I'm always sharing and posting all the Private Club Radio stuff. But that's it for now. Now let's get to the episode. If you break it down, my little club career, you were one of the first ones to give me a shot. And here we are, client turned friend turned, I don't know what to call us at this point, family, basically. Yeah. But from, and this has only been 7-8 years. I got introduced to you as the Godfather. So I'm very happy to have the Godfather here chatting with me. Lee Stall, CCE, CCM, absolute beast. Yeah, I just absolutely love your story, and kind of fortunate too when I was thinking about it, when I was, getting my notes ready for having this talk. I'm fortunate to almost watch the journey a tiny bit, because you were at, Lawn Tennis Club, New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club for, 30 years?
31.
31 years.
Yeah.
And I believe I caught the last 2-3 years maybe. And then from there going on to all your interim give me the brief rundown, so, how'd you get into the club world, and how's your last 30 years at one club?
Well, I was a student at the University of New Orleans in the hospitality program, and there was a job posting board, and I noticed they were advertising for banquet bartenders at New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club, and I went and applied, and I was hired. And that was in the fall of '86. And so I worked a few parties, and in December of '86, the manager called me up. He says, "Look, so the assistant manager just put in his notice. He's going to go take a GM spot at another local club. Would you like to apply to be the assistant manager?" And I said, "Yeah, it'd be great." So we went and met on a Sunday morning at a local McDonald's and had coffee. And he interviewed me and he offered me the job right then and there. And so I worked for him at New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club as the assistant for 3 years. And it was one of those positions where if you're going to grow, you got to go. Because the GM said he was going to be staying. He wasn't going anywhere. And I knew I was ready for something else other than the tennis club. So I left and went to the Pickwick Club, which is a men's luncheon club, a city club in New Orleans. I was there for 6 months as the assistant manager. And the guy who was the manager at the tennis club, who told me he was never going to leave, put his notice in saying he was going to be leaving. But we were very lucky that we had a lot of mutual members at the two clubs. And so I had kept in close contact with the tennis club. And they called me immediately and asked me to come back as the GM. And so I did that in July of 1990. And I was there until April of 2018. And the club grew while I was there. Of course, I grew personally and professionally. Got married, started a family, raised two amazing young men. And in 2018, the climate changed, the culture of the club was changing, and I just felt like it was not a direction that I wanted to go in. So I put my notice in that I was resigning. And so I did so, and I left there in April of 2018 thinking that I was retired and I was just going to live my life playing pickleball the rest of my life and hanging out with my wife and visiting kids. They both live in other states. So that was the plan. And then in June of 18, the phone rings and it's Southern Yacht Club in New Orleans. And they're looking for a GM. And so I went there thinking I was going to go there on an interim basis for a few months. I wound up spending 9 months there. And they hadn't made any progress toward looking for a new manager. And I said, "Listen, when are we going to start this search?" And they said, "Oh, well, we kind of canceled the search because you're here." And I said, "Wait a minute. Nobody told me." So I told them that I was ready to go. And so I helped them. I placed a new manager there and helped them with the transition and retired again, I thought. Then a few months later, I got a call from Houston Yacht Club. They were looking for an interim. So I went there for 4 months, placed the manager, came home. About 8 months later, they called me up at Houston. They said, "Well, this fellow didn't really work out for us. It wasn't a good fit. Come do it again," which I did. And I went and spent 5 more months there with them and brought a new guy in and placed him. And he's been there since. I just spoke to him this morning, in fact. Great guy and great membership. And so he's been there over about 2 years now. And then in the fall of 21, got a great opportunity to be interim assistant GM at the Shreveport Club in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Oh,
fantastic!
Love the Shreveport Club.
It's fantastic city club, dining, lunch and dinner only, white glove service, tableside food preparation. I mean, just fantastic. And I was there for 8 weeks, serving as assistant GM and the lead of their search for a new assistant GM, which we were able to hire someone. And he's just recently made his first full year there.
Very nice.
So he's doing great. And I didn't work at all in 2022. And 23 just started, so I'm not sure what the future holds. But I'm looking forward to going to conference again this year. It's something I've always enjoyed doing. In the 33 years I've been at CMAA, I've probably been to 25 or 26 world conferences. So always loved that.
Really?
Yeah, the networking there is just as important as the continued education. So I love doing that. Um, yep. So that kind of brings you up to speed on what I'm doing.
I want to go back to you said the manager at the club said, if you want to grow, you got to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want
Well,
to, why do you think he said that?
well, because he was in the number one spot and I was in the number two spot. And in other words, he wasn't leaving. So if I wanted to be the boss, it was going to have to be somewhere else. Um, and I understood that. So
Now, is that common? Meaning to be that upfront, like as a GM to be that up? Is that like a common thing, or is that like a not so common? Is that like yeah? Go ahead.
well, I went to him and I said, "Are you going to be staying? Are you going to be leaving?" And he says, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to be the wingman forever. I've been here 3 years. I've learned just about everything I can learn from you and from this club and this membership and the experience that I've gained here. I need to get more experience, and I'll probably have to do that somewhere else, unless you're going to be leaving. And then I would hopefully get the GM spot, and of course, be able to grow into that position as the club grew." And he said, "No," he says, "I'm not leaving. I'm a New Orleans guy, and I've been here my whole life, and I'm going to stick with this club. And this will probably be my last job." So I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to look for something else." And he knew that, and he was fine with that. I gave him proper notice, of course, and everything. And we're still friends to this day. And that was back in 1989 when we quit working together. So, and it's important throughout my career. Whenever I had what I'll call a superstar employee, I would approach them and say, "Listen, I think you're capable of more than we can offer you here. The challenges we can give you, you certainly overcome, and so you're capable of more. Would you like me to keep my eyes and ears open for something else at another club where I think you'd be a good fit?" And to a man or to a woman, they all said, "Oh, wow, yes, please." And so I was able to place people throughout my career. Um, of course, there are some people that don't fit the bill, and you don't want to approach them with something like that, because the last thing you want to do is to push someone off on someone else that's not meeting the standard for you, which we wouldn't do that.
Which is like
So,
probably a very, very wrong thing to do.
yeah, yeah,
Funny, but not.
yeah. So we have this sort of a code that we won't poach employees from one club to another without the manager's approval. Um, at the same token, I don't want to push somebody off on somebody else that I'm having a problem. So here, you take this problem. I wouldn't do that either. Um, and so, it just depends on the club. It depends on the club manager. Our youngest son is an assistant manager at a large country club in Mississippi, and he's in the number 3 spot there. The number 2 guy and the number 1 guy both been there for a long time, and doesn't look like they'll be leaving anytime soon. And so the position my son is in, they've had 4 different people in that position in the last 10 years. And so that's a spot where, unless something happens and one of the top 2 guys moves on to something else, it's the spot where you're probably going to stay 2-3 years, maybe 4, and then you're going to look for something else. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in that spot forever until something happens to one of those guys. So that's what I mean when I say, if you want to grow, you got to go. And you want people like that. You want people to work for you that have ambition, show initiative, want to learn, want to grow. That's the kind of people you want. Somebody who's keeping you on your toes. Because if you slack off and you got a superstar working for you, somebody's going to say, maybe the old guy's seen his best days are behind him. So at least that's my theory. That's how I always handle things.
I've seen you encounter a lot of different people of different levels, different positions in a club throughout the years in different capacities, both in when you've been there as a manager and also when, you've come as a guest to come, see me do a show at somebody else's club, or if we just met somewhere at a club just to hang out. But the appreciation and the respect people have for you is absolutely tremendous. Any place you go into that you've been there and worked or not, people remember you. You remember people. It's truly amazing.
Well, and I'm grateful for the relationship that I've had with all of the employees wherever I've worked. I have a nurturing nature about myself. I sort of become the the Papa Bear, or the protector, if you will, or whatever you call it. And so I'm not only their boss, but I'm their mentor, um, and advisor, and I treat everyone the way I want to be treated. Everyone gets treated with respect and dignity, and you have to be able to relate to people on every level. And of course, that goes for the members as well. You're talking to members who may be at the top of their industry, and you're talking to members who may just be getting into an industry in an entry level position, and you need to be able to speak to everyone and everyone in between. And so I've done that, and I've been blessed over the years where employees, former employees, uh, have called me throughout my career to say thank you. You don't know what you did for me, the path that you showed me, the corrections you made in my behavior or my attitude or whatever it may be. I've written countless letters of recommendation for young folks who are applying for graduate school, applying to be teachers or educators and working with young people. I've been interviewed by the FBI, by the Secret Service, because
we probably should have led with that. The word that I keep kind of going back to, you said it, relatable, but also leadership. Do you think it's learned? Do you think it's natural? Do you think it's a mixture of both? Where do you think it comes from for you? Because, obviously, you have your CCM and your CCE, but, there's always that age old debate too. Can you teach leadership? Is it something that you're born with? Is it a mixture of both? How were you with professional development?
Well, to answer your first part of your question, I think it's a little bit of both. I think you have some of it within you that you've just learned throughout your life as you were raised with your parents and grandparents and others in your life when you're coming up. And then the people that you're having conversations with members, people that are making major decisions, much more major decisions than we would ever have to deal with in our business. And you learn from those people, and you get to pick their brains, and you just listen to even if you're just listening in on a conversation that others are having and picking up great bits of information. And of course, our mentors throughout the industry. You might be able to find a couple dozen people say, "Oh, Lee Stall is my mentor," but Lee Stall can name a couple dozen people who are his mentor as well. So there's a lot of that, and that goes back to all what they talked about as far as the networking. When we get together, whether it's a local chapter or whether it's on a national basis, the CMA World Conference or any of the BMI courses or things like that, conferences, workshops, you just try to make as many connections as possible, and we learn from others. Um, so, and then of course the continued education. Absolutely would not have been able to accomplish what I have throughout my career if it wasn't for the continued education through the Club Management Association. Those folks do a great job. Everything is current. They stay on top of things in every part of our industry. there's someone there is responsible for that and making sure that we're made aware of all the latest and greatest. So can't say enough about CMAA. First conference that I went to was in 1991, my first World Conference on Club Management. And I didn't have a budget from my club for professional development. They had never participated in anything like that before. And so I didn't have a budget. So I went on my own dime. And my goal was to come up with, find ideas, learn about new products, anything that I could use and come back to my club and put in place to save money. And I was able to accomplish that. And so at the very next board meeting I went to when I got back, I said, guys, I went to this conference and here's some of the things that I learned. And this is some of the things changes that we're going to make. And this is how much money we're going to save. And it was more than 10 times what it cost to send me to that conference. And so somebody on the board said, well, did we pay to send you to that conference? I said, no, I went on my own, but I'm hoping that, by showing you what I'm able to achieve by attending this, the club would consider a, future professional development line on the budget. And at that meeting that night, a proposal was made. They reimbursed me for all my expenses for that conference. And from then on, I had a very generous professional development budget throughout my tenure at the club.
It's you don't see a lot of people sometimes willing to put in that little bit of investment, put a little bit of skin into the game. It's always when it's your own money, it's always a little bit different. So, and I think that was genius of, kind of going to them and taking the time after to go, okay, I'm going to save them all of this money. I'm going to show them. I'm not just going to tell them.
Right.
Who were some of your mentors?
Well, my very first one was a gentleman by the name of Arvinder Vilku. He's an Indian of this Indian descent, and he was the manager at the Pickwick Club in New Orleans. And he was really the very first person that I met that I would tell you is a food and beverage expert, an absolute genius, a fantastic chef in his own right. He retired from his club after 31 years, and he and his family opened a restaurant in New Orleans. The first year they were open, they won Best New Restaurant in New Orleans for the year. They have since been James Beard finalists a couple of times, and just doing fantastic. They bought another property, and later this year they'll be opening a second restaurant with an absolutely different theme, a whole different menu and everything. And his wife and both his son and daughter are involved with the restaurant and just doing great. And so I worked with him for 6 months at the Pickwick Club, and he really taught me more about food and beverage in those 6 months than I had learned in the 3 previous years at the tennis club. So that was fantastic. And then I was able to bring a lot what I learned from him back to the tennis club and enhance the food and beverage program at the tennis club. So he was probably my first. And then as I joined the association, a great friend named George Constance was managing River Hills Club in Jackson, Mississippi. And it was a tennis club very similar to New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club. And George was a veteran of the business. And so he was another early mentor of mine, just because if I had a question, I would go to him because, we were sort of paisans because we both ran tennis clubs. John O'Mara in Lafayette. John O was probably the original Godfather. John O knows he knows a lot about a lot, and if you bring up the subject, he's been there, done that, he's experienced it. He started in the business, I want to say, in the late 60s or early 70s, down in Pensacola, Florida. And he's been at several different clubs throughout his career, and he's still involved. He also does interim work. He most recently retired from a long stint at the Petroleum Club of Lafayette. and he and I are close friends to this day. Danny, at some point, I want to talk about you and how we met each other and developed the relationship we have over the years. So whenever you think it's appropriate, if we can get to that, whenever.
All right, yeah. So how I always I love when you tell it, because it's just such a funny story to me, because it was so strange. And looking back, I was like, this could have been like TV worthy, like scenario of what happened. Um, so I like thought I was going to die. No, kidding. So I remember when I was first starting out, I was early 20s, mid 20s, and I was getting more into the club world. I was performing a lot for a couple of local clubs, and then in my area, and coming from a family entrepreneurial business background, I was like, okay, so a lot of these clubs that are hiring me, I started doing some research and finding out about the CMAA. So I knew, okay, hey, there's an association, and a lot of the clubs that I've been doing shows for are a part of that association, which means anybody who's part of that association must do fun events, because if they're people like you who are being proactive about their professional development, all that fun stuff. So I went on the website, and it says all the clubs that are members of the CMAA. So I was like, all right, well, there's my client list. So I just called. I started calling people, and you were one of the. I forget why I even called Louisiana first. I think I was like, I just want to try to get out wherever, and I called. I left you a voicemail, and you called me back, and basically said, I'll let you take it from there. But this was like the start of a beautiful relationship.
Well,
started with the voicemail.
Yeah, and I get this voicemail from this very enthusiastic young man, and I said, "Well, I got to call this guy back, because truth be told, we don't return every call,
Oh, trust me. I know.
So I called you back, and I mean, you were just a fireball of energy, and telling me about your show and what you do, and this whole thing, and it sounded very good, and I thought, well, you know being in the private club and the nature of things, we sort of have this protective umbrella that we keep over ourselves. I said, have you done this at other clubs? And you said, yeah, I've been to, I forget how many at the time. And I said, well, give me some references. Give me three guys or three club managers that I can call and get a reference. And you did. And I called them. And every single one of them said, Lee, I promise you, if you're not happy and your members are not happy with Denny's performance, I will pay you back whatever fee you were. Personally, they were going to reimburse me, and that's how strongly they endorsed your performance and yourself. So I said, well, that's good enough for me, because I knew that no club manager would say that unless they meant it, because that's just the fraternity we have. We take care of one another. We don't try to sabotage each other. So I brought you in, and that first show, I mean, people were just, I think we had around 50 or 60, including the table with the people who fell asleep.
Yeah. Okay. Listen. I think that was the second show. I think that was the second time I was there. Let's not. Actually, maybe that was the first, but that was amazing.
Anyway,
but they were the oldest. Like, they were so old, Lee. I don't know why you sat them so close. Like, actually, I can understand why you put them close.
so they could hear.
Oh my goodness, that was so funny. And what was interesting is your club really didn't do stuff like that, right? Like, you didn't really do
We didn't.
events, and then you also had food involved. And I think I remember something happened there, but you were also then like hands on as soon as something happened or needed help. As soon as anything seemed to be behind or started to even look like it was going to be behind, you automatically stepped in, whether it was helping the bartender, getting more glass, whatever it was. You were just there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was, but it could have been any number of things. I could have been helping plate up in the kitchen. I mean, who knows? But that's fine. That's the things that we do. And I always did that. Still do that to this day if necessary. So that part of it never bothered me at all. But yeah, you're right. That yours was like the springboard of okay, so we've discovered this segment of the membership that hardly ever comes over to the club because whatever the physical activities are that we're offering, swimming, fitness, tennis, they just aren't into that anymore. But they would like to come to social events. They feel comfortable at the club. They feel safe. There's parking. It's secure. It's near their home, so they don't have to go too far. And so they come over to see what this is all about, and they absolutely loved it. And I'm pretty sure we had you back 6 months after the first visit. We had you come back again for a second visit, and your show was so good that probably half the people who were at the first show came back to the second show because they said, "I got to figure out how he's doing this. I can't figure out how he's doing this." And then I guess I probably had you come by the club. I think a total of 5 or 6 times at New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club before I left. And then.
And they were just sold out. It was crazy because people just kept coming. It was awesome.
And then, of course, it got bigger and bigger.
I think one time I was like, I think one time too, I was like, yeah, let me just do like a workshop for the kids.
Oh, yeah.
So I just came in early, brought in some stuff. We like hung out with some of the kids for like an hour or two or something,
That's
like
right.
90 minutes. We just taught them some magic. I didn't like an adult or two come.
Oh, yeah.
Too, I think, like just like some of the older members, like I want to learn some magic. That was a lot of fun.
Great. That was really great, and that was great of you to bring that up and make that offer. And I'm glad we had good participation in that. That was a lot of fun. And when I was at Southern Yacht Club, and I told them, I said, "Listen, we got to get this guy over here," and the Commodore really didn't buy into it. He supported it because he wanted to be supportive of me. But he really wasn't too enthusiastic about it. So we limited the crowd to 100 people. And, of course, naturally, 104 showed up because, I swear I made a reservation. Yeah, okay. So, anyway, we had that first show. I think you may remember it was Valentine's. And when the show was over, I'm standing there at the doors. People are leaving, and I'm giving out roses for the ladies and everything. And you were with me, I think, and the Commodore came over and he says, when you first brought this idea up, he said, I didn't think it had a snowball's chance in hell. He said, but this has been one of the best events we've ever had at this club, and I congratulate you. And I just was smiling from ear to ear because I was like, I told you.
Now, one of my favorite moments was when I learned about your Godfather title, because I flew in and I was mid-20s, and this is like probably one of my I've done a bunch of shows, but like haven't like flown for too many, maybe like one before. So I was like, okay, I got my like Uber ready, or I think like a rental car. I don't remember, but you were like, I'll pick you up, and I was like, okay. Like, it was just, looking back, it was very shady. And then you're like, I'll drive you to the hotel. I was like, okay. You're like, and then I could pick you up and bring you to the club. But then at the same time coming in, I was like, okay. So I figured I will let Lee pick me up. So, my parents like, oh, you're flying to a gig. They're like, where are you staying? I was like, oh, like one of the hotels. They're like, which one? I was like, I don't really know. I think I, at that time, did like hotels.com or something. And they're like, well, how you getting to the hotel? I was like, oh, the guy's going to pick me up. She's like, who? I was like, oh, the guy who works for the club. They're like, oh, okay. Like, it was just, like, looking back, it was a little shady, but no. But I remember when we were in the car, because you also called Mr. Hamrick, Mr. Ken Hamrick over at Metairie, who's now a super successful realtor in the in the area down there. And so he booked me as well. But then I think something was happening downtown. I think we did like yours on a Thursday or Friday, and then his on like the Friday or Saturday, whatever it worked out to. But I remember something big ended up going on downtown, and all the members were going there. So they like lost, like most of the people coming to the show were, are fun people. So they were obviously going to this thing thing downtown. So so I'm in the car, and you're like, okay, so Mr. Hamrick over at the club, we're going to call him right now on speakerphone. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, it's just like, oh, like what? You're going to have this guy call speakerphone. So I was giggling at that. But basically what happened was we had to switch days and stuff. It was just, to me, it was just a really funny interaction because it was like just this like 3-way negotiation of like how we're all going to like work this through. And I like just landed from a plane coming to a gig with the guy I didn't know was going to like pick me up. Like, it was just like this funny, like looking back to me, like how our first interaction started. But like, you know, that just makes total sense. That's just who you are, who you were. Just that, you know, it's everything that you talked about, the relationships, the leader, you know, it's just, it goes back to like that relatability and just being a genuine person.
Well, thanks,
Yeah.
Danny. I mean, that's sort of, you know, that's how we were raised. I mean, that's, you know, they talk about Southern hospitality, but that really is it. And that's how we all are around here. One of the things you mentioned was coordinating with the other clubs. I always enjoyed when we would book you to come into New Orleans. I would try to get 2 or 3 other clubs to book you on the consecutive nights so that you could come in and maybe spend up to a week in the area. And then we have an agreement between the clubs. If there were members who were just dying to see you, but they couldn't make it to the performance at our club, one of the other managers will say, well, I'm not sold out. Tell your members to come here, and can you take a couple of mine? And so we were able to do that, and that worked out great.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Mr. Lee Stall, the Godfather, down in the Pelican chapter area. We are having conference soon. We're going to conference soon. We're going to be there. If you are going, make sure you come say hello. I will be over at the members only show booth with the Michael Guten plan. We're going to be over there. Come pop over, say hello. We can do some really cool, fun magic. We'll make you laugh and smile. We're here just to have a good time, but make sure we connect over at conference. The next couple episodes coming up soon. We are working on some new segments, some new ideas. So we'll be working and putting some of those out there as well. Like I said, we are new, and when I say we, it's really me, new to all of this, so please share any and all feedback you may have and give us a like, follow, and engage with us over on the social medias. We'll be over on Instagram and LinkedIn the most currently, but we look forward to seeing you for the next episode, hopefully seeing you at conference, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great week. Bye-bye.